Well, hello and welcome to another episode of My Counselor Online. Hey, if you've ever had questions or thoughts about family counseling, then you do not want to miss today's episode. My name is Matthew, and I'm thrilled to be hosting today's episode. And I want to introduce you to our special guest and one of our counselors here at My Counselor Online, Alyssa Bostwick. How are you today?
Doing well. So good to be with you.
Good to be with you, and thank you for joining us today. Before we dive into this article that you wrote about, tell us a little bit about yourself so the audience and the viewers can know just a little bit more about who you are.
Yes, Matthew, when anybody asks me this question, I always answer it different. So we're just going to go with it. But
Let's go with it.
Bostwick, I'm a counselor here in the state of Colorado. I'm born and raised Denverite, so I love my city. I am actually a licensed clinical social worker, and I got into that because I really wanted to study families, actually. So writing this article is really close to my heart. And writing this article and even just studying family therapy comes out of me being an adolescent that probably needed a family therapist. And so being able to study and kind of dive into these spaces, I just want our viewers to know like what I'm going to talk about today, I've personally experienced and has changed my life. And that is why I'm like so passionate about it. And when I say personally experienced, it was like when I was like in my mid-20s, married and like struggling. And so I kind of wish that the family therapy that we're going to be talking about I had received. And so studied family therapy. Then I did about 4 years working primarily as a family therapist with adolescents in Division of Youth Corrections and Human Services. So like the most intense family dynamics you can think of, I was in the middle. All sorts of messiness in that with neglect and abuse and brokenness. But I think my heart as we kind of sit here, and I kind of want this to be the foundation of where we work, is knowing that parents are God's gift to humanity, that we all need a good mom and dad, but none of us are Jesus and we will all fail. And so that's kind of how I've approached it, and getting to work in those really messy places just allowed me to fall in love with moms and dads who've made the biggest mistakes that we can think of, but seeing God redeem them and restoring them to a place to be a mother and a father in a way that they felt disqualified because of maybe their actions. So as we talk about this today, that's kind of where I'm coming from with my experience. I'm also a mom, so I feel that as well.
Yeah, so if you're watching or listening, she has the street cred on what we're about to talk about. So the article that you wrote about is what to expect when you begin family counseling at MyCounselor.Online. Let's dive into it. What inspired you to write this article?
Yeah, I think what really inspired me is I wanted to remove all barriers from people to call in. My family,
Mm,
the family therapy at My Counselor Online looks a little bit more specific. The way that we really approach it is evidence-based, is neuroscience driven, and is focused on attachment. And so when I wrote this article, I really wanted people to know what they were walking into. I wanted to help kind of ease any anxiety of, do we need family counseling? Because I feel like even in that, especially because it's the mom or the dad that calls, not the kid, or
mhm.
the grandparent or the foster parent, whoever kind of is that attachment figure for them. I wanted to kind of take away the shame of it, that this is okay, that for us to do this is a good thing. And we don't have to wait until it's worse, but we can kind of call in. And so I even write in the article, if you're reading it, you probably need family counseling, but not in a shameful way, but in a way I say it like, I want to join your village. I want to join the community to help you become the best parent you want to be. Why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah.
And how I feel is I'm not your kid's mom, you are. And so I want you to really be able to step into that place and own the authority Christ has given you. And
Hmm.
so this is repetitive, but removing those barriers, removing that shame, that anxiety, that worry, and really know like, I'm not going to blame you. I might have you take accountability of what you've done wrong, but it's in that sense of God's grace, not shame or guilt.
That's so good. And I appreciate you saying, if you're asking or reading the article, you probably need therapy, because I was just thinking that. And it's, again, it's not in a shameful way, but a
Yes.
lot of times if we're asking those questions, it's a good indicator that, like you said, it's you're,
Yep.
you're inviting yourself into a good village of people. So
Yes.
that's really good.
Yep.
So talk specifically, like, who did you have in mind when you're writing this article? Who's this article written for? And I know you've already kind of touched base a little bit on that, but
Mhm.
maybe dive into it a little bit more.
Yeah, I think when I think about family therapy and the population that that can serve, I write in the article like kind of a blast of here's everything we can kind of address in
Hmm.
family therapy. But I really like this is an intervention. This is a way of doing therapy, and what the
Hmm.
presenting issue, what you're bringing to us, is what we'll address. It's just the way I go about working with it. So you can come in with like your child like sexually acting out, suicidality, trauma. Like you could come in like after like a partner has committed infidelity and the family's kind of restoring, but after like a separation and coming back after the parents have done counseling, but the whole family is affected. So coming to this place of healing, or in a way like there could be grief or a loss of a loved one, or I think about like I kind of get the calls about, hey, something's wrong with my teenager. It's out of my control. I don't know what to do. Can you fix them for me? And that can be externalized behaviors in the way that they might be like self-harming, cutting, eating disorders. It might look like being the bully at school and beating people up, or it might be the internalized behavior where the kid is shut down, and you can't reach them.
Hmm.
Right. And I say kid, and I'm catching myself here because family therapy isn't just for the teenager. Family therapy, I've got a lot of families that have come through our doors that it's like all of them are adults and they've got the grandkids now, and they kind of are hitting those dynamics that played out when they were kids, and they're like, oh, I don't want this to be the rest of our lives. And so I work with parents and sometimes like they're full adult children working on dynamics that played out in their homes when they were younger and
Hmm.
currently affecting their lives. And so, Matthew, I just want anybody to know, like, whatever your family is, bring it. If it's a missionary family overseas, bring it. If it's a foster family, bring it. That we have a great team of clinicians that we're all trained how to do that.
Okay, Alyssa. So in your article, you discuss what family therapy looks like and also what it doesn't look like.
Yes.
So can you talk to us about that?
Yes, beautiful. I'm so glad you asked that question, Matthew. I want to address kind of what it doesn't look like. Family therapy doesn't just look like me working with your teenager. I want everyone to hear my heart with that is when you call in, of course, I'll work with your teenager, but I need you. I need the guardian.
Hmm.
I need the loved one involved. I'm the expert in intervention, of the theory of how to work with them. And we're good at it. We're good at working with teenagers. But nothing replaces the love of a mom. And so family therapy doesn't look like me just working with your teenager. Unfortunately, I think that's what a lot of people want for family therapy because they can kind of come in and be intimidated, like everything I'm doing isn't working, it's above my head, I don't know what to do. And
Hmm.
that's what family therapy does look like. Is I'm not going to be a coach, I'm not going to be a teacher, I'm not going to be a parent. I'm going to sit here and kind of track your guys' cycle. Family therapy really looks like got a shut down kid over here who won't talk to mom and dad, who won't allow them to access him. And let's say like it might be I'm thinking like a suicidal ideation, like that
Hmm.
kid is really struggling with depression, and is struggling with suicidal thoughts, and mom and dad don't know what to do. And so in those spaces, I really need to engage mom and dad and help them realize like what's inside of their heart that is blocking them from really taking care of their kid, because we all have this, Matthew.
Hmm.
Every single parent on the face of the earth is going to have some kind of block in their own heart. um,
Amen.
right? I know it. For me, my blocks is my family history. right? When my kid needs something and I'm like really struggling, I have to check myself and be like, why am I not engaging with my son right now? And I have to go to that place and check my heart. And that's what family looks like. Family therapy looks like, in the sense that I want you to be brave and courageous and allow me as your therapist to, maybe without your son present. Sometimes that's what family therapy looks like, is I'm just going to meet with mom and dad. I'm just going to meet with mom. I'm just going to meet with grandma. I'm just going to meet with the kid. And it's a variety of different sessions, because I'm trying to find the block. I'm trying to like create this flow of their son who's struggling to be able to reach for help and be able to say, help me, help me, help me. And oftentimes, like, a lot of mental health is actually healed. It's co-regulated, is kind of what neuroscience looks like. And God says it to Adam at the very beginning, man is not supposed to be alone. And the original text of that means is mankind. God literally says to Adam, you need Eve, and Eve needs you. Your son needs you as a mom. And as a mom, like, it's part of our hearts as fathers, it's part of our hearts that we want to be image bearers. We want our kids to grow up and be like, we want to invest into them. So it's removing the blocks of that flow. So
Yeah.
I'm going to get real in your business.
So you mentioned something a while ago about fixing.
Yeah.
What is your role in that? Because I think sometimes people think that if they go to therapy or if they come see their pastor, you
Yes.
know, I am going to fix their problem. What is that? You know, when I go into therapy, what should I expect?
Yeah. A partnership.
Hmm.
That when it comes to fixing, I think so many people, like in our current culture, want the quick fix. They want the self-help book. They want to do the 10 steps and they're better. But it kind of goes back to what I was saying about Adam. Like, it's that sense of, you need me to really like embody the love of Christ and believe in you and be able to call you out on your stuff when it's getting in the way, but in a way that says, hey, Matthew, this doesn't really feel like the man that you want to be. Could we talk about that? Like, whatever that is. And the process is actually empowering you to be able to fix your own problems. I want the solution, the fix, the solution to come from your heart, your mind. I don't live in your life. You do. So you don't really learn anything if I just say, yeah, call your mother, tell her X, Y, and Z, and come and tell me how it goes, and then we'll make a new game plan. Right? I want you to come up with those solutions. And oftentimes we can only come to those solutions when we feel the freedom to be ourselves, and there's value in that. Yeah. I could
That's
answer
really
that.
good.
Yeah.
No, thank you for answering that. What's a final piece of advice that you would give to a family maybe listening or watching this episode right now?
Yeah. I think my final piece of advice would be just to call, that there's no harm in a first, second, third session to just try it, because all of us, I think, want to be better. And I don't know why we wouldn't do that for ourselves, for our kids, for our families. I really feel like we're all on this journey of, like, I really feel like the way Jesus loves us is to love me in my mess, but to not leave me there. And as a family therapist, I really feel like that's my job, is to love you in your mess, but I'm going to work as hard as I can, hopefully linking arms with you so that we can work together, so that it's the process of, how is this mess created? Right? Just like me, if I didn't check my family history and how it messes with me, I would create a mess for my son. I really would. And so to be able to like lean into that space. So, and also, if your therapist doesn't have a therapist, run. As you're hearing my story a little bit, it's that process that we're all real humans, and we need good people who are working on themselves to be in that space with you. So I don't think most people see that real side of a therapist. So being pretty real, Matthew, it's kind of vulnerable to kind of share that background. But for our viewers to know, like, what I'm asking you guys to do, I'm going to do myself.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. If your therapist doesn't have a therapist run, because as a pastor, if your pastor doesn't have a pastor, somebody pouring into him, do
Ugh!
this, do the same,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
because you're right. It goes back to that Adam and Eve, you weren't meant to do this alone.
yes.
So, man, this is really good. Thank you so much for sharing. And I would encourage everybody listening or watching, read the article. It is so good, and it does kind of relieve a little bit of weight off of us. And so thank you again, Alyssa, for writing it and sharing your heart. I know everybody listening or watching can feel your heart for this, so I appreciate that. One of the things that we like to do in our episodes is talk about a trending topic. And today our trending topic is narcissism.
Ugh,
So I'm praying this episode will hit the headlines in the morning, right?
yes,
Um, and I'm glad we get to hear from a clinician about this topic. So
yes,
take us in whatever direction you want to take us into with this topic, and tell us what is narcissism?
yeah. Oh, such a big question.
Hmm.
Narcissism is a tricky conversation because it is one of the things that is rarely studied. The narcissist isn't, they're usually very high functioning, very smart individuals. So they aren't the ones that end up in like the mental hospitals so that we can actually study them and have information. And so when we look at like the DSM, narcissism is one of the most like the littlest amount of research within our diagnosis. And so when I'm sitting here hearing about narcissism, where my head and my heart goes is the process of diagnosis, is assessment.
Hmm.
Is for everybody listening, narcissism, we all have the opportunity to be a narcissist. Narcissists are not born, they're made.
Hmm.
They tend to be individuals. And right now, I read a study that it's usually 80% men, 20% women, but I think that's more cultural. If a woman tends to be a little narcissistic, our society's like, ooh, and calls her bad names and kind of sets her down. So she learns really quickly not to behave that way. Men, on the other hand, become CEOs and professionals and run companies.
Hmm.
So anyway, I'm not going to nerd out with that, but so there's a, I'm going to say he if I use a pronoun because statistically that's what it is. More of our husbands will come in with this, but they are not born, they're made, and the environment in which they are made in is an environment that is hypercritical. So it tends to be like the father or the mother that really just cares about performance and appearance. They're the athletes that the parents show up to all of the games, cheer them on. They have the best of the best, right? The best
Hmm.
cleats, like the best grades, like they're the president of their class because mom's over there running the PTO and really cares about what that looks like. And so really like cares about that, really critical about mistakes. And then there's this other part that's like enabling, that like notices all the defectiveness.
Hmm.
So noticing that that's the mistake part. They can't make mistakes. With this part that like oftentimes there's also the parent or some kind of dynamic that makes them feel like they're God's gift to the world. So it's oftentimes this hypercritical parent that's really intense, and then this other parent that's just like, oh, little one, but you're the best one, like you're going to run the world one day, I believe in you, while they're told that they're a piece of crap here. And so it's this environment where they think they're like grandiose, right? Like they're the best gift, like, oh, no one's realized that there is gold inside of me, no one's seen it yet, like that part of them. Well, there's this other part of them that really feels like I'm defective. That is what it is. What it looks like is a pain in the butt. The person that makes it all about themselves, that is intimidating, that doesn't listen, that has no empathy, that could care less, because what happens is they have no like object permanency, which means like no mirror inside of themselves. It is all about them. There's no mirror of what's happening inside of you. Because even right now, Matthew, I see you take a deep breath. I watch you clap your hands. Narcissists wouldn't have even recognized that you did that. think about their poor wives and spouses.
I need everybody to stop what they're doing right now and share this because, wow. So let's talk about maybe the relationship dynamics. And I know you've mentioned already that a little bit with like parenting and children, but what if, like you said, what if husband is a
Yes.
narcissist? Like, what are some of the warning signs?
Mhm.
What can you look for
Yeah.
in your spouse? And I agree. I'd give it the pronoun he also because I think you're spot on with that. So tell us a little bit about that.
What it looks like in relationships is oftentimes a really like abusive environment in
Mm,
the way that it might not be physical abuse, it might not even be verbal abuse, but in the sense that it's very emotional. That everybody has to cater to the dad or whoever the narcissist is. And when I say narcissist, I cringe because everybody uses that word so much. So think of
mhm,
it like as a spectrum or a trait. When I say narcissist, I'm not talking about DSM personality diagnosis. That is the extremist version. But in our society, it can be more of like an injury. It can be more of like a full-blown trait. And so when you're in these relationships, it can be really confusing. Wives or spouses tend to cater, they tend to enable because they feel the fragility. They feel this grandiosity, but the defectiveness.
hmm,
And as you kind of, I don't think many people would put words to this because it's not very safe. And what I'm about to say can feel very vulnerable. But in a narcissist, there is a very broken child inside of them. And consciously, I don't think we're aware of it. But as I have wives and spouses that come into my office, there is this bleeding heart inside of them to take care of the defective side. They don't ever want him to feel worse, but they feel that without really putting words to it. But at the same time, they're hurt by the grandiose side. Everything inside of them isn't listened to. Everything inside of them is never good enough. That what they
hmm,
do, there's always a mistake. Like, hey, you showed up late to the basketball game. Is everything okay? That the wife is just checking in, and husband immediately is like, everything's fine. Why would you ask me that? And in that moment, it becomes about them. There's no
mhm,
mirror to see that person's caring for me. There's no recognition of that. It becomes me.
mm,
Everything is me, 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 because they are in a way trying to protect the defective side through this very grandiose kind of part. So it becomes very one-sided. And you'll see the spouse who nothing they do is about them. It's always about that partner. And the kids kind of do the same thing. If they ever make a mistake, they will become criticized. And so they
mm,
try to do the best they can to walk on eggshells, not make a mistake, not breathe the wrong way.
mhm,
Because, and there's four kind of different types of narcissism, which I don't need to go into today. One can be very violent. And I think that's the one we think of often in our culture. Other ones can like be in a very self-shaming way, like in the sense of, oh, you got a promotion at work. Well, you got a promotion and I didn't because I guess it's easier in your world to kind of get promotions than mine. No one's ever noticed my work ethic, that I'm like really good. Like if only they like allowed me to become the boss, I would run this company and do a really good job. When the wife is just sharing that they had gotten a promotion at work.
mm,
Can look like that instead of in this way that can kind of be very critical and demeaning and angry and very scary. It can be in a
mhm.
shaming way that any of your achievements have to become about my lack of achievement. And if only I was recognized.
Hmm.
Narciss-
So yeah, right. So what does the spouse do?
yeah,
If they're in that relationship with a narcissist,
yeah,
because man, you stepped into some deep waters right there.
yeah. Well, I want the spouse to even hear from like a clinician about how hard this is.
Hmm.
That it's not just living with them. As a therapist, I only see narcissisms usually in my office when something's gone wrong in their lives, like they've lost the job and the wife is separating and he's about to lose his family. And so they show up for therapy, but there's no recognition on his part that they're there because of his failure, his struggle. And narcissistic traits are actually one of the quickest fallouts of therapy. They're the least likely to follow through and continue to do therapy because they don't believe the issue is in themselves. The issue is everybody else. And so because of that piece, being married to somebody or in a relationship with them is very challenging. And currently the research shows that narcissism isn't curable, but it's treatable, that I can teach empathy, that as a therapist, like they need like a corrective emotional experience for that little boy, that little kid inside of them, which is my job, not wife's job. It's the therapist's job. It's not wife's job. But really kind of what research really shows is run, leave, or it's the wife that's like, oh, but the Bible says, the Bible says, the Bible says, the Bible says, or in the sense of, I love them. I see who God made them to be, and they're just not this yet, and I'm going to hold on to it. That person, I would give the advice of lower your expectations and get a really good support system. Make some really good godly friends who are the same sex. Do not ever have a confidant that is the opposite sex, unless like it's your pastor who is supporting you and there's like professional boundaries there. But we don't ever want you to ever be in a position to have an emotional affair, because this is breeding ground for one. So get a really good support system with same sex, same gendered friends. Have your family who can really come around you and support you and speak life, speak truth, speak the positive things that you are doing well. And this can kind of sound feminist, and I don't mean it that way, but in the sense of build your life, go to yoga, join a reading club, make some friends, build a career that isn't just to be a wife, because narcissisms tend to kind of be controlling. So you tend to have no access to finance, none of those things. And so whatever is safe for you, put yourself first for that moment. I always give this cheesy example, and it's so cheesy, Matthew, I'm not good at math, but biblically marriage, 1 times 1 is 1. And so if I have a half of a person times half of a person, it's a fourth of a marriage. And so I really want you to work on becoming the fullest version of yourself in the healthiest way that you can do that, whatever that looks like. If it's bubble baths, go for it. If it's reading a self-help book, I'm not against those, go for it. Lisa First writes killer books, grab those, read them. I totally just plugged there, but she does a great job and she believes in therapy and all that. So go for it. But really like investing into yourself. If you really feel like you don't have peace or the blessing of the Lord to leave, okay, but you don't have to stay the way that you have been. It's tricky.
Yeah, it is. And go back to your cheesy analogy. I think I'm gonna steal it. It works. Yeah, that's so good. Thank you for sharing about that. I want to transition, even though I don't want to, but we're going to transition because I would love to hear more about this. So maybe we can do a future episode just centered around narcissism. And again, thank you for sharing with us today. I want to transition to our Q&A, and here at My Counselor Online, we love to answer your questions. I have some questions that were already submitted to us that I'm going to ask you. And I also want to encourage everyone watching, or if you're listening, you can submit your questions for future episodes at MyCounselor.Online/ask. We have some good questions for you, so I hope you're ready. And good, let's get into it. The first question is, I'm 37 years old and I fight with thoughts of rejection because my boyfriend, who I thought was the one, he broke up with me. How can I move forward and not keep thinking of him?
Oh, sweet one. I just want to give her a hug, whoever she is. these moments are so challenging because it's not only the feeling of rejection from him, but the spiritual dynamic of really feeling like the one, like that blessing from the Lord, that it feels like that person is their person. And so really wanting to just dive in and kind of recognize that this isn't an easy thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the advice I have to give isn't easy. It's I would invite that beautiful 37-year-old to feel it, that to find a safe person that she can grieve, that she can be mad at the Lord, that she can ask the hard questions, that she can allow herself to feel whatever that is. I can only imagine 37, like there's even like some insecurity and some pieces about herself being at that age. And I want to say, screw cultural expectations and kind of just feel what you need to feel, because in our sense, oftentimes rejection can be so heavy. We need somebody else to lift that rock off of us. And we also, just like I said earlier, Adam needs Eve. We need sometimes another person, and it's not always spouse. It can be a loving therapist. If you are any of my clients, you know that I will fight for you and I love you and I will lift that rock off of you. Even if it's just in the 45 minutes you get to be with me. But in that sense that she deserves somebody to sit with her, that she shouldn't do this alone. That she'll actually heal faster if she doesn't do it alone. And for her to really grapple with these questions. We cannot heal what we do not feel. It's so cheesy, but I mean it. So allowing kind of that wall that can kind of come up, because if we feel like the dam breaks, we will be flooded by the emotion. Why we need somebody else there so that we don't get flooded, but also for her to feel it, or else she'll get stuck in that feeling forever.
That's so helpful. I'm going to move on to our next question, and it's this: how do I know if I have healthy boundaries in my relationship? I don't want to be too rigid, but don't want to be taken advantage of.
Yes. Oh, boundaries. We could add that as a whole conversation just with narcissism. Like, we'll do 2 separate videos.
Yeah, exactly.
Boundaries is the tricky thing, because in my conceptualization, boundaries is dependent on the relationship and the person. So this is the hard part, that it's not a black and white answer. So I would want that person to really think about what relationship they're thinking about. So for me, for example, I have to have different boundaries with my dad than I have to do with my mom. I have to have different boundaries with my one sister versus my other sister. I have to have different boundaries with different, I think about different pastors at my church with different experiences. Like, some people are really good at speaking into this part of my life. This person's really good at it. And so I kind of have to have different boundaries of where I go with who gets access. Think about boundaries in the term of access. And that doesn't have to be rigid. There are times that when we are too no boundaries, we kind of have that pendulum and we swing to rigid. Okay, cool. Accept your mess, realize we're rigid, and try to kind of come back to the middle. And in that sense, negotiate. Feel what is appropriate for that relationship, and only you can tell me what is right. Nobody else on this earth, and I love this question, I'm going to challenge this person. Nobody on this earth can tell me what an appropriate boundary is except for you, between you, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. I can be over here and be like, you let them have access to your bank account? Oh, right? I can say that, and I'll kind of be I'm gonna be curious and kind of judgy about it, because I'm like, your bank account, really? Boundary, cool. But in that sense, I'm gonna be really curious about what was happening inside your heart, and I want them to do the same thing. Instead of shame spiraling, too rigid, too fluid, it's why? Let's be curious, let's be kind, and only you can tell me what is healthy for you. I wish I had a better answer for that, Matthew.
No, it's good. That's good. I mean, I feel like we could do a whole episode on that. And I know for whoever asked that question, that was very helpful for them. And again, for those of you who ask these questions, that that's a huge step.
Mhm.
And really thank you for doing that and inviting us into helping you out. And I just want to say again, if you have questions, we'd love to answer them on future episodes. Um,
Mhm.
we won't mention your name, but we will try to help you as much as we can without knowing too much, right? So we also know that there's this other part of the question, you know,
Yes.
we have more questions, right, with the questions, but so we try to answer them as best as we can.
Yes.
So you can go to MyCounselor.Online/ask and ask your questions, send them away, and they'll be on future episodes.
Yep.
Alyssa, thank you. Like
Yes.
this has been so helpful. I feel like each one of these topics that we talked about, they need to be their own episode. And it's like we had to rush through, and I'm like, I want to spend more time on this. So maybe we can have you back and talk about some of these things again, especially the whole narcissism thing. Man, I thought that was great. And I would encourage our viewers and our listeners to send this episode out and share it with some of your friends. And Alyssa, thank you so much again for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I want to make sure you guys stay up to date with all of our helpful and latest content here at My Counselor Online. We have our YouTube channel, our Instagram, our Facebook. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram with the handle of Love My Counselor. We're on YouTube where you can subscribe and like our content, share our content like this video today. You could share this. Our YouTube handle is My Counselor Online Christian Counseling. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you again for another episode of My Counselor Online.